Welcome back to Keen Reads. Today we'll be doing Bookshelf Tour Part 4. As usual, we'll go through the knickknacks on top of the shelf first, and then we'll go through the books. Today we're going through Shirley Jackson up to the modern time. So first we have another stuffed Totoro. My friend from pharmacy school actually made this for me. We have my Rubik's Cubes. This one is actually heat activated. So as you hold it, well, I'd have to hold it longer, but it warms up and you can kind of see the colors. And then this is just a standard speed cube. We also have my Ohio State flag, which I have yet to hang up in my new house, but it's up here. Starting out with the books, though, we start out with Shirley Jackson. So we have Always Lived in the Castle. I've also read The Lottery by Shirley Jackson. I haven't read her other... The Haunting of Hill House, I believe, is her other major work. So I have not read that yet. One of my favorite books that I read in 2023 was Carson McCullers' The Heart is a Lonely Hunter. Next, we go into one of my two favorite authors, possibly my favorite author. We'll actually see three of my favorite authors in this video. But we start out with J.D. Salinger. So this is 3 early stories. These were published recently, like in the past 10 or 15 years or so. Well, I guess republished. They were originally published in individual form in like journals and things like that. Raise High the Roof Beam Carpenters and Seymour an Introduction. Franny and Zooey, one of my favorite books. 9 Stories, also one of my favorite books, or short story collections. And then The Catcher in the Rye, of course, which is also a great novel. Next up, we have the Dune books. I do have the first Dune, however, my wife is currently reading it. So we have Dune Messiah, which is the sequel. The Children of Dune. God Emperor of Dune. Heretics of Dune, and then Chapter House Dune. These are the original books that were written by Frank Herbert. I don't have any of the ones that were written by his son, and I don't plan on reading any of them. However, I have read all of these other than Chapter House Dune. I've been meaning to read Chapter House Dune for a while. However, there's so much that goes on in all the other books that I feel like I would really have to go down like a Wikipedia rabbit hole to catch up to everything before I read Chapter House Dune. The only Bradbury I have is Fahrenheit 451 and Dandelion Wine, both of which I have read. I'll probably just start pointing out books that I haven't read at this point. Watership Down by Richard Adams. The only Kerouac I have read is On the Road by Kerouac. I also have Dharma Bums, which we've looked at down there with one of my previous ones. Some other just kind of random authors. Kingsley Amos's Lucky Jim, The Collected Poems of Philip Larkin, and then Stoner by John Williams. One of my favorite quotes is from this novel. I think it goes, "The person we love at first is not the person we love at last." Man, I'm forgetting it now. There's more to it. For love is not an end, but a means by which one person attempts to know another. I think that's it. We have my Vonnegut, Slaughterhouse-Five, and then The Sirens of Titan. I really need to read more Vonnegut because I did enjoy both of those. Italo Calvino, If on a Winter's Night, A Traveler, and then Invisible Cities. I really like this edition of Invisible Cities. It just looks really clean. However, I did like If on a Winter's Night, A Traveler a bit more. Wrapping up this shelf, we have my James Baldwin. So the only Baldwin I have that I have not read is Going to Meet the Man. I've read If Beale Street Could Talk, Notes of a Native Son, and Giovanni's Room. All right, moving down to the next shelf, we have In Cold Blood by Truman Capote. I have not read this. Howl and Other Poems by Allen Ginsberg. The Complete Stories of Flannery O'Connor. Revolutionary Road by Richard Yates. I remember really enjoying this when I read it back in college. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. And then we move into my Gabriel Garcia Marquez collection, who's one of my favorite authors. So we have Memories of My Melancholy Horrors, Of Love and Other Demons. I think I have everything that he's written here. And I've read all the fiction. I have not read all of the nonfiction. So, like, I haven't read Scandal of the Century. These next couple I have read. So I have read No One Writes to the Colonel, The General in His Labyrinth, and The Story of the Shipwrecked Sailor. The Story of the Shipwrecked Sailor was really surprised me. It was a 5-star read for me. Changing the History of Africa, written with Fidel Castro. Have not read this. Next we go into some that I have read again. So In Evil Hour, Strange Pilgrims, Leaf Storm, and Clandestine in Chile. This is his autobiography, Living to Tell the Tale. I have not read this. Have not read The Fragrance of Guava either. Chronicle of a Death Foretold, The Autumn of the Patriarch, and Love in the Time of Cholera, all of which I've read. Then we have another Changing of the History of Africa. I don't know why I have 2 copies of it. And then to bring this collection to a close, we have Collected Stories, News of a Kidnapping, both of which I have not read. Although I've read most of his collected stories in individual works. I think there's a couple things in here that I haven't read. And then possibly my favorite book, 100 Years of Solitude. Next we have Elie Wiesel, Night and Dawn. I believe there's another novel in this trilogy that I have not read. Anne Frank's The Diary of a Young Girl. The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. And then we go into another one of my favorite authors. Probably my 3 favorite authors we've seen already in these first 2 shelves. So we have Alice Munro, Canadian short story author. We have her collection Dear Life, The Progress of Love, The Beggar Maid, Runaway, Too Much Happiness, The Moons of Jupiter, Open Secrets, Dance of the Happy Shades, Hateship, Friendship, Courtship, Loveship, Marriage, Something I've Been Meaning to Tell You, The Lives of Girls and Women, and then The Love of a Good Woman. I think there's 2 or 3 collections that I have not read, but other than that, I've read everything by her. We have 40 Stories by Donald Barthelme. Really wasn't a fan of this. I know a lot of people like him. Very highly regarded short story writer, but seemed kind of gimmicky to me. That might be slander, but... We have my Toni Morrison, so we have Song of Solomon and Sula. I've also read Beloved. I just don't have a copy of that. Sylvia Plath, The Bell Jar, and then Ariel. Have not read The Name of the Rose by Umberto Eco. Kind of intimidated by this just from what I've read about it. My Cormac McCarthy, All the Pretty Horses, The Crossing, Suttree, and Blood Meridian. Oh, and The Road. Really not a fan of this cover of The Road. Don't like movie covers. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest by Ken Casey. Slouching Towards Bethlehem by Joan Didion. If anyone else has read Joan Didion and has any recommendations, I would love to read more of her stuff. She just has a lot out there, and I don't know what to focus on. So I'd love some recommendations on Joan Didion if anyone has any. And then John Gardner's Grendel. Underworld and White Noise by Don DeLillo. And then we go into my pension. So we have Inherent Vice and Bleeding Edge on this shelf. And then my pension continues down here with Mason and Dixon and The Crying of Lot 49. I've read all the pension that I have here. I also have Vineland and V on other shelves that I have not read. Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead by Tom Stoppard. I have not read this. My Raymond Carver collection. So we have What We Talk About When We Talk About Love, Will You Please Be Quiet Please, and then Where I'm Calling From, all of which I've read. Oh, and we have his collected poems. Wasn't that impressed with his poetry, but I do really like his short stories. Then we have the Neapolitan novels by Elena Ferrante. I've already showed you these in another video, so I'm not going to pull them out. But we have My Brilliant Friend, The Story of a New Name, Those Who Leave and Those Who Stay, and The Story of a Lost Child. Of the Lost Child. Gilead, probably Gilead, by Marilyn Robinson. One of my favorite works, kind of a short story cycle, is The Things They Carried. It's about Vietnam by Tim O'Brien. Would highly recommend this. Paul Auster, we have his collected poems, and then the New York Trilogy. Salman Rushdie's The Satanic Verses, and Midnight's Children. Greatly preferred Midnight's Children to The Satanic Verses. Graphic novel or comic books, not sure what you'd call them, which is Mouse. Part 1 and 2. Some more sci-fi, so we have Hyperion, and then The Rise of Endymion. I think The Rise of Endymion is the third one in the series. I've only read the first, so I've only read Hyperion here. Atonement by Ian McEwan. I plan on doing a video in the future where I'm going to be talking about this. And then Ender's Game. I'll also talk about this in that video. Moving down to the next shelf, we have we have the completion of the Ender's Game Quartet. So we have Speaker for the Dead, Xenocide, and The Children of the Mind. I remember really loving this quartet when I was younger, like probably freshman year of college. I don't know how it would hold up now, but it's one of those foundational things for me that got me into reading. Don't really plan on reading any more Orson Scott Card. But yeah, really loved those for a long time. Then we have the Wolf Hall trilogy by Hilary Mantel. Got these all at the same time because I've heard just so much about them. So we have Wolf Hall, only one that I have read, and really wasn't that into it. So it'll probably be a while before I read Bring Up the Bodies, In the Mirror and the Light. Another graphic novel, we have Watchmen by Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. The Savage Detectives by Roberto Bolaño. I plan on reading this year, I think, or at least in the near future, because I really loved his other two works by him that I've read, which is 2666 and By Night in Chile. I also just really love this volume, looking at the cover and everything about it, the yellow. It's really beautiful. We have my Kazuo Ishiguro. I've read 3 of the 4 of these, so I've read Never Let Me Go. The Unconsoled, I have not read. While We Were Orphans, which is the least favorite of the 3 that I've read. And then The Remains of the Day, which is my favorite of what I've read. Poisonwood Bible by Barbara Kingsolver. The Corrections by Jonathan Franzen. Purity by Jonathan Franzen. Have not read this, and I honestly don't think I ever will. I should probably just get rid of it at this point. Freedom by Jonathan Franzen. So I read 2 of Franzen novels, and they were okay. Nothing really stands out to me about them. And then we start with my Jeffrey Eugenides, who's probably my favorite modern author, or author who's still publishing. And this is his first novel, The Virgin Suicides. All right, looking at the final shelf of this bookshelf, we finished up with my Jeffrey Eugenides. So we have short story collection, The Fresh Complaint, The Marriage Plot, and then Middlesex. Middlesex is my favorite book by him. The Book of Strange New Things. I remember really liking the premise of this novel and then really hating the execution of it. The God of Small Things by Arundhati Roy. Jennifer Egan's A Visit from the Goon Squad. My Michael Chabon. So we have The Adventures of Cavalier and Clay. Summerland. In Wonder Boys. The only Bret Easton Ellis that I have, which is Less Than Zero. The Art of Racing in the Rain by Garth Stein. My Colin McCann, so I have 3 novels by him. I have Transatlantic. Another one of my favorite modern authors. Dancer, sorry. And then Let the Great World Spin. Really love this novel. Some of my favorite quotes are also from this novel as well. My Khaled Hosseini, And the Mountains Echoed. 1,000 Splendid Suns. And The Kite Runner. Of course, we have House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. Juno Diaz's This Is How You Lose Her. And then My Struggle Volume 1. So I've actually read all of that shelf. So that's what we got. Thanks for watching, and we'll read all of that shelf. So that's what we got. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week for our final edition of the Bookshelf Tour.